Hello, and as the topic of this subject seems to indicate, it's with regards to face-to-face meetings. What it is the main topic got me thinking about the number of times I actually meet with clients, and I think it's one of the telephone calls that I got from a prospective client saying whether we should meet face-to-face first, how important is it? And for some bizarre reason, it sort of stumped me because I think it's worth talking about as a subject. Because what I'm finding more and more is with the repertoire of clients that I've looked at, I'd say around about maybe 25% of them uh, we've actually met face to face. It's very difficult to think about it, but it is one of those situations where we've never really put it and quantified it. But I think there are many reasons for this. But yeah, and there's a lot of shortcuts to think about. So I'm going to be very quick on this one because I know that time is precious and I need to pretty much get back to meeting up with clients one way or the other. And here's the results. My personal feeling is that 25% of meeting clients face to face is important. So it starts off from the initial meetings. So how a customer would get in contact with us. Previous podcast would say, let's have a chat. Let's give us a telephone call. So telephone call is a digital device now. It's a form of communication. It allows you to get an idea of what the person's like, talking to them and seeing if they are trustworthy. So again, for example, call centers, this podcast itself, and then going on to the way that we understand what the client is going through. So again, it's how do you then gauge what that person's like in real life? It may or may not be important, and 75% of my clients seem to think that it's not as important. So what then is the case with regards to meeting face to face? I think that after the first initial contact, once a rapport has actually been built either over the telephone, over the email, over Skype, over WhatsApp, I think that those main criteria then allow you to say whether that person is trustworthy. So face-to-face meetings are almost like a gauge of whether you trust working that with that person and having a rapport with them over the telephone, for instance. Okay, so then what happens is that if there is a requirement to actually meet that client, if they are in the local area, if they are somewhere where you would be able to find a middle ground or come to us or we come to them, mainly it's us coming to them, then what happens is then we start having a face-to-face communication, gauge whether things need to be moved on, but it takes an incredible amount of time in order to actually meet a client face to face. If, say, they're in, for instance, Brighton or Ireland, it's a massive stopover in order to actually gauge whether that person's trustworthy. So, again, with the way that we've actually worked, is we've said that the best thing to do is either a face-to-face meeting or Skype meeting, video recording, and then take it from there. Because we live in a growing digital world, but it's actually quite important for us, like this podcast itself, is to grow a rapport with the clients and understand that we are quite approachable and communicative and able to gauge what their problems are just by a telephone call. So yeah, I would say it's not as important to meet face to face, but it is a main criteria to actually have some sort of communication. Pardon me, communication with them. So here's the final bit: is then we move on to things like emails, and of course, emails are the most important way to actually create a paper trail for the client. It allows you to gauge if certain requirements have been asked, certain projects have been tracked. So if there was a mistake along the way, there's a way of tracking it. This cannot be done face to face. Even though we do make a record of it, it's got to be corroborated with the client as well. So again, the only way to do that, for of course legal purposes, for record purposes, is important to actually have a paper trail, which is either email, which is either a WhatsApp for a quick chat and emergencies, and the final stage usually works out even more so is works on a digital level is video screen recording. So the way that we do it is, for the purposes of tutorials, we screen record, use TeamViewer for helping them guide through the actual website. So if there's a need for us to actually teach them how to actually use a specific software or a specific piece, then we pretty much use the screen viewer. It's very difficult to actually meet up face to face and then grab the mouse or the computer that the client is working on and show them step by step. It is possibly much better to actually have a video tutorial that we've already set up, or actually do it in real time using a screen sharing software. So yeah, for the reasons, that's the reasons why we've decided to actually use podcasting as the main important thing, because you can gauge whether we listen to you, we understand what you want, what you're after, almost straight away. So yeah, thanks very much for listening, and please feel free to like, share, subscribe, and hopefully you'll get more out of this, and gain some sort of trust with Hertfordshire Web Design. Speak to you soon, and thank you for listening.